Are back in full effect for this full moon. It's Taurus season. It's a Scorpio full moon. There was no way that I wasn't gonna come and speak on these energies. And normally, I would have deleted the 2 attempts that I did yesterday. But apparently, there's this misconception that my life is so perfect and that my life is so easy. And so I wanted to, post that to kind of show that, like, no, my life, I go through my fair share of nonsense with the world at large and with technologies and so forth. However, I just push through it. I just persevere, in a way that we are all capable of, in a way that's possible for all of us, but in a way that many of us have been taught that we are not capable of and that's not possible. And so, just like always, we're going to go ahead and get it started. Shout out to Oya over there. But we're going to go ahead and get started with our 528 hertz tuning fork. We're going to go ahead and tap that just to make sure that we are all aligned. So take a deep breath with me. Quick inhale. And exhale. All right. So, without further ado, we're just going to jump into it. Essentially, this new moon, this full moon in Scorpio, very much is dealing with is very much dealing with the energies of change and transformation. So that means that as we, baby, come on. We are dealing with the energies of change and transformation, but also like our ability to multitask. Because as we are entering into these energies, which are very much in flux, we are taking the time to be grounded within our transformations. That is the combination of the Scorpionic and the Taurus energy. It's the grounding within the transformation. So it's we're taking leaps of faith, but that are grounded in things that we have previously been shown that are positive. Peace to the people in the chat. You are appreciated for tuning in and joining us. Shout out to everybody who's here. It's 13 people. I was born on the 13th. That's a beautiful sign. We love the synchronicities over here. Hi, shout out to everybody in the chat. Yeah, like, but as we're tapping into these energies, we want to be grounded within our transformations. We want to make sure that we are making changes that are aligned and that are based in grounding and not just, flights of fancy. It can be very easy at this point in time to kind of get lost in some of the more ungrounded elements, because water is essentially the opposite of earth, whereas earth is that grounded, stable force that's always going to be there when you need to step on it and when you need to land. Water is also very malleable. Puppy. This is Oya, everybody. She's teething right now. You want your bone, baby? Yeah, I get you your bone. All right, I'll be right back. I'm going to get Oya her bone, and then I'll be right back. What's this? Is that a bone? Oh yeah, she's good and occupied. Thank you for your patience. But as I was saying, earth and water are opposites. So inherently within that juxtaposition, you are going to get some friction because coastlines, the earthly areas where water and land meet tend to be a little bit volatile. Like coastlines can be very, very beautiful, but they can also be dangerous when the ocean energies get a little bit volatile. So we want to make sure that we are balancing these within ourselves. We're just going to go ahead and do a quick card pull. Gratitude to the people in the chat. We're going to go ahead and do a quick card pull to just kind of guide the energy. So most high angel spirit guides, and this is our Animal Intuitions deck. What do you have for us as we step into these full moon energies? And we'll do one more shuffle. I hope everybody's having a beautiful Sunday. It's a little bit early, at least where I am, but I be up with the crack of dawn. My ancestors don't play. So we have flamingo spirit, embrace the in between. So I think that's incredible because we were just talking about the spaces where earth and water meet and how those are powerful. So if we're talking about embracing the in between, it's embracing the areas that are not quite solid but are not quite water. It's not quite a flow state, but it's also not quite a solid starting ground. And honestly, that can be one of the hardest energies to navigate because as you are within these energies of like, it's a little bit solid, but I could go with the flow and change and do this. It can almost be option overload, analysis paralysis, where the in between produces and presents so many possibilities that our conscious 3D minds can get very overwhelmed. And that's why it's important to lean into your own intuition. That's why, shout out to channels like this. I'm not the only person who's doing this. Shout out to all the other wonderful readers out here in divine space time. But you also have intuition within yourself that you can tap into. Like, as much as these readings are fun and we all get together and have community, there's also a space that there's so right now I'm doing a full moon reading for the Taurus moon Scorpio energies, but also just kind of dealing with how to navigate certain periods within your life. Like, the reason this is a timeless reading is because as much as these energies are resonant now, we all have Taurus within our charts, whether it's in your houses somewhere or in your planets prominently. We all have Scorpio. We all have these very powerful dynamic energies, and there are going to be points in time when we need to manage their interactions when they come into play. This is one of those particular periods in time, but also times in the future, you will also encounter these energies. So it's just a matter of being mindful of how the universal archetypes work and how essentially when you start to think of the like I said, the archetypes that the energies embody, you get a more dynamic view of how the minute energies interact. It's like once you learn a concept on a larger scale and then you deal with, minutia of it. It's like once you learn algebra, you can deal with pretty much any type of algebra equation. Once you learn geometry, you can kind of deal with any type of equation that presents. So what I do here is I kind of present the larger archetypes to be learned and embodied, but embrace the in between. The in between is probably one of the scariest places to be in this reality and in this space time continuum. It can be hard to accept the gray area because black or white is more comfortable. Like, everybody's very comfortable with a yes or a no because then you kind of know where you stand. But maybes are one of those things that are deeply uncomfortable because it's ambiguous, and humans don't like ambiguousness. Like, humans very much like for things to be definite, so it can be hard to embrace the in-between. But one thing about flamingos is, everybody, when you think about flamingos, what do you think of? We're going to treat this like a kindergarten class. What do you think of, boys and girls? You think of flamingos standing on one foot because that's like the classical image that you get from them. And because they have such long, spindly legs and such, kind of bulky bodies, like, that's not like a small body. It's not a sparrow-sized body. And yet it manages to balance on this one leg, and that is kind of a perfect metaphor for embracing the in-between. It is embracing the balance point between the two extremes. We're very comfortable in extremes. We're very comfortable in joy. We're very comfortable in sorrow. As much as we'd like to think that we're not comfortable in sorrow, like, this universe very much, and not even this universe, I will say that this particular planet and the people who run it shape people into being very comfortable with sorrow. Sorrow is most people's day to day. Most people are much more uncomfortable with joy. You know, it's like that saying that's like, you're not actually afraid of failing, you're more so afraid of succeeding. Like, that's the much scarier thing. So as we are embracing the in between, we are embracing that point of darkness, that point of pure potential where anything is possible. And that's kind of the scariest part, because we just want, you know, like, we just want to know what we're going to be dealing with. And when you are dealing with multiple or even infinite possibilities, you can't prepare for all of those. So you really have to be in a point and in a moment of surrender. And that's hard. That's so hard. It's so scary. Like, surrendering to the universe and the divine flow. Shout out to uh the Tao Te Ching, which I'm currently reading, but shout out to Lao Tzu, and shout out to just all of the ancient wisdoms that have kind of been telling us these things for centuries, and we're just kind of now getting back around to them. But yeah, we're going to be embracing the in between. We're going to be embracing the point of pure potential, and also being comfortable with letting go anything that isn't serving us, even though that might seem scary. It can be scary to let go of a guarantee for a maybe. It can be difficult to let go of yes for something that's more ambiguous. But also at the end of the day, you have to realize that as long as you're out here living good and living and, you know, keeping your karma clean, doing unto others as you would have them do unto you, you know, very, very simple thing. Shout out to everybody in the chat. I appreciate you saying that I speak wise words. Shout out to Ingrid. Shout out to Jay. Shout out to Margaret. Yeah, like, shout out to everybody who's been in the chat. You're all appreciated, and your ancestors really bang with you if you ended up over here. This is a channel for those who are really divinely loved. So welcome, welcome. I appreciate you, and I count you all as squad, kin, you know, gang, tribe, you know, whatever euphemisms you'd like to use within those instances. But yeah, so embracing the in between, like I said, can be scary because the ambiguousness. We all like to know where we stand, and that's why the combination of the Scorpio full moon, which is very much let it go, let it go, let it go, like Erica Badu bag lady type vibes. It's very much a space of like, understand that you are much more than the things that you think define you. Like, we have within this space-time continuum, like, things that we define ourselves by. So like your income level, your political, you know, affiliation, your economic standpoint, like all of these things are kind of your sexual identity. Like, all of these things are things that we use to define ourselves. But we are so much more than that, on a soul level. And when we understand that and understand the true power that we have within this dynamic and within the space-time continuum, we understand that at any moment we can decide that things should change, and then they just will. Our complacency is really the reason for a lot. And so the next card I pull is Koala, Spirit Has a Plan. So we have the first card for everybody who's just joining was Flamingo, Spirit, Trust the In-Between. And we're talking about how the uh, earth elements and the water elements form like a really interesting in between space, and how they are juxtapositionally kind of opposite, and that land is solid whereas water is flowing, and how the space between solidity and flow uh can be a bit much, can be a bit overwhelming, but Spirit has a plan, and that's why it's okay to relax into the in between. That's why it's okay to relax into the unknown, because Spirit does have a plan. And just like this koala is very much sitting and chilling and being in its receiving energy. Like, it does not look like it's putting forth a lot of outward effort in terms of like trying to, you know, cultivate or seek anything. It's very much within an energy of sitting back and receiving, sitting back and being patient, and sitting back and waiting for an outcome to reveal itself. Because when Spirit has a plan, like, I was raised within Islam, and there's a classical quote within Islam that says Allah is the best of planners. But like, even when apply that to your own spiritual system, like your ancestors, any beings that you deal with that are on higher dimensional planes have access to more information than we do. So at any given point in time, they are going to know more of the variables that you're going to have to encounter. They're going to know more of the path that is going to best serve you because they can see all the obstacles ahead of time, whereas you and your one-to-one 3D ratio are just going to be encountering them kind of as they come. So when you get into the fact that these energies are very much within a space of, shout out to everybody who's just joined the chat. It's really interesting because I'm so sensitive to energy. So when like an influx of people join, like my spirit guides start trying to like take in new information from like what their spirit guides specifically want them to hear. And so like I'm still just learning to do that. It's the interesting thing in going live versus just doing regular readings. But yeah, spirit definitely has a plan. And we have been taught that spirit's plan for us is inherently negative. Like there are so many things that are just undercurrents within society that's like, oh, mother nature and disasters and just like everything spiritual kind of has a negative connotation. Like church leaders are corrupt and like all these various different things. And while those are true, spirit is so much bigger than the flawed humans in which it runs through. I think if you read the Bible, if you read any classical text, you will see that the divine energy that people are sometimes able to tap into is not defined by them. It is defined by its own prerogative. And so spirit definitely has a plan for all of us, and as we are stepping into these energies, it is very important that we remain mindful of this, we remain grounded within this energy and within this aspect. So let's go ahead and actually we're going to do the this isn't my witch's wisdom deck. Ooh, which deck is this? I lost the box for this deck many, many moons ago. It's not my Moonology deck. It is. I cannot think of the name of this deck, but we're just going to go ahead and do a pull from it. So most high ancestors, angels, spirit guides of our collective, the people who are in the chat right now. What energies should they most be mindful of as we are navigating this in-between space and as we are trusting in the divine's plan? Moonflower. Bloom even if no one is watching. Okay. So the first thing that this makes me think of and speak to is the fact that true artists do what they do because it emanates strictly from their soul. Like it's not a thing for external validation. It is not a thing for applause. And at the end of the day, we are all true artists. We are all true creators of our experience. So understand that when you choose to walk these paths, when you choose to make these changes, it may be a lonely road for a season, but you are doing it. You are supposed to bloom even if no one is watching. It's like, like those plants. I don't know if anybody saw like the old Genesis and the Menace movie that came out in like the 90s, but like essentially there was this plant that only bloomed like once in 100 years, and like Mr. Wilson was trying to see it and like Dennis messed it up. But essentially there are plants that only bloom once in 100 years, and they bloom that infrequently, whether there's anyone around to witness it or not. So your unfolding, your becoming is not subject to the whims of the outside world. It is very much a self-generated process that you have control over. Transformation, making the changes that you want to see, being the change that you want to see in the world, is just a matter of the decisions that you make. It's just a matter of the steps that you take based on the decisions that you make. Once you decide in your mind and then you start to implement it in the 3D, that is how ideas grow into tangible things and then grow into much more than that. So whether you are receiving outside validation for the changes that you are trying to make for you growing into your best self, whether that encompasses leaving certain things behind, or whether that encompasses bringing on more things, because within the blooming you have the duality of growth, but also as the bloom is growing, it's moving forward within its life cycle, and as it does that, it is, in a sense, getting closer to its own mortality. But so we have the juxtapositions of growth and mortality, and we also have just the essence of life within that, because nothing grows forever within life. There are going to be periods of ebbs and flows, and that's why embracing the in between is so important. Because if we get used to too much of any extreme, it is going to skew our perception. If someone spends too much time thinking of negativity, they're going to see negativity everywhere. Whereas also there's a certain thing as toxic positivity, and so it's very important that we are maintaining that balance, but also doing it for our own sake, for our own good, not for anyone else's applause or validation or approval, because at a certain point in time, that starts to get hollow, and it also starts to get uh you start needing more and more of it to kind of sustain it. It starts to kind of be like a drug and a high. And so moonflower, it's ironic that it's moonflower and we're talking about the full moon. We have the image of the full moon and flower that appears to kind of be a lotus. It's on the water, and shout out to lotuses because they very much represent the symbolism of blooming, growing from the mud. Like they literally get it out the mud. And so when you are thinking of this card and this energy, we have to take into account the fact that, like I said, there's going to be ebbs and flows in life. Life hasn't always been a crystal staircase, and yet we persevere. This is my third attempt to get this message out. I tried to do 2 videos yesterday, and I was trying on my laptop, and even though my laptop is a good laptop, it was still being super janky and slow and all of these things. And we persevere. If at first you don't succeed, dust yourself off and try again. Isn't that what Aaliyah said? Shout out to Aaliyah. Shout out to Aaliyah. Um, she's one of our spirit guides that we tap into over here on this channel. If you see me in my everyday life, I kind of dress like her. She's one of my style inspirations also. But we're also going to get into Diana, be one with nature. So nature is so healing, gang. Like bird song can literally lower your blood pressure. Like petting a purring cat can literally lower your blood pressure. Being out in nature and getting sunlight is actually very good for your health. Taking walks, all of these things. So when we talk about be one with nature, it is as much a woo-woo thing as it's actually a 3D tangible thing that has been proven to have scientific benefits. Because on this channel, we accommodate every spectrum of people. We accommodate the people who need scientific proof, but we also embrace the people who are just like, no, I just believe it because I feel it and that's how I know it's true. So shout out to the dichotomy. We deal in dualities over here. So be one with nature. Make sure that you are grounding. Make sure that you are getting some vitamin D. Most places in America, we're in a warming trend. It's starting to be spring where you are. So get outside, get some fresh air. Go for a walk. Go for a hike. I personally, the reason that the first deck that I always use is my spirit animal deck is because that literally spirit animals is one of the ways, shout out to my native ancestors, but spirit animals is one of the ways that my specific ancestors always communicate with me. So anytime I go on a nature walk, it's also like a conversation with the divine. It's also like a conversation with my ancestors because whatever animals I see out there, whatever animals that are strange that I encounter, I'm like, oh, I should probably take that as a sign. If I'm just randomly over here in my neighborhood and I see an egret, I'm gonna take that as a sign because, bro, what are you doing over here? Like this is not where you be at. And so nature is always trying to communicate with us. The divine is always trying to communicate with us, and that's why so many of the ancient of the stories of old that translate wisdom have animals within them, because there's something to the symbolism of them. Like before we had all this common created media, the most common thing that we had was animals. Every, like, it was like, oh, you've seen a deer, I've seen a deer, you know how deer are, they're skittish, they're this. So if you say someone is deer like, that's going to translate a whole slew of connotation without you necessarily, or you say you should approach this situation like a deer, like you should approach it cautiously. And so that's one of the reasons that animal symbolism is so prominent within ancient stories, but also just within uh, the human experience to this day, because you get into these energies of very much like this image has a fawn within it, which is a baby deer, which has the connotations of innocence. And even though she has her bow here, which means that she's hunting, you see that this deer is safe within her. So it seems that the bow is more so used in the protecting of the baby deer than in hunting of it. And so even that has a message to us when it talks about be one with nature. It talks about uh the protective element within nature, how if you feed crows in your neighborhood, they will come back and give you stuff. Like there is a symbiotic relationship that we used to have with nature that modern society has kind of cut us off from. But tapping back into that is one of the things. Like if you are ever really worried about like things going on in your 3D life, if you just go to like a beautiful park and sit under a tree, I promise you will feel 15% better, at least 15% better. And that's just real. Um, because you get to understand that as much as the world that we have been taught to believe is true, there's also so much of the world that is actually beyond uh the metal, contraptions and boxes and technology that we have enshrined ourselves within. Like there's many things outside of that. Like, and going and tapping in with nature will kind of put those things in perspective. It will kind of make you be aware of the fact that there are things out here that are bigger than you, and that's okay. Because that's the juxtaposition that a lot of humans encounter, is once they start to understand, like, oh no, there are things out here that are bigger than me. Some people get scared with that because it messes with their illusions of control, which is why the first couple cards that we got, shout out to anybody who's just joining us, were the flamingo spirit, be comfortable within the in between, because as we know, flamingos balance on those one leg, so it's very much an energy of balance. And then we also had koala spirit, because spirit has a plan. Like koalas are not, like, they would not survive in most uh habitats. They're not the most equipped. Like, they're not necessarily sloths, but they're also, they're not the most equipped. But nature put them into a niche where they could thrive. And that's very much the same thing for you. Spirit has a plan for you. You have a divine purpose. There's a niche in which you are meant to thrive. You just have to be mindful of it and to step into it. When things can get overwhelming, it's very much important to be your own cheering section. That's why the next cards that we had were the moonflower, which is a lotus, which, as we said, comes out of the mud. We have the full moon there, but it basically says bloom even if no one is watching. And that speaks to the fact that, just like most Scorpios, you don't need outside validation. Like, have you met most Scorpios? They have a level of confidence that really says, I don't care what you think. And also Taurus season, we're within Taurus season. And Tauruses, once they make up their mind about something, really how you feel about it is the least important factor after that. Like, once they've decided, well, how you feel about it is the least important factor. So as much as that can be toxic in unhealthy ways, it can be very, very validating, because sometimes you need to dig in your heels when you are right, when you are correct, when you are standing on principle. You do need to dig in your heels in those instances. And so it's very important that we are being grounded within change. We are very much digging in our heels about like, no, I shall not be moved. You're not going to tell me who I am. You're not going to tell me which path I can take. You're not going to define me from the outside when you don't even know me. Like, you, what did Ti said? You might have seen me in the streets for shouting, you don't know me. Like, shout out to the person who says rivers and creeks are where they go to for balance. Um, just the sound of the ripples. No, water is incredibly soothing. Water is incredibly healing, which is why, as bad as a rep as like, you know, storms and such get, there's also a soothing element within them, because think about the fact that plants are like, there are things that like we eat everything that grows on this planet. Like if vegetation were to suddenly stop, we would also, even the meat products that we eat plant products to survive. And so we very much have this symbiotic relationship with nature, which is why the next card was be one with nature. And thank you for sharing that sentiment. You're truly appreciated within this space for sharing. It's, you know, it's vulnerable to go and, you know, talk about your personal things. So we appreciate you. You are wonderful for that. Because maybe somebody else can gain inspiration from that. Maybe they have a creek or a river within their space that they can seek out, and maybe that'll be healing for them. That's where the concept of each one teach one, and also why sharing our perspectives is so important, because you might have something that works for you that might work for someone else, but they've just never encountered it because the people who they are around or the circumstances in which they were raised never really acclimated them to that as an option. I know personally, you know, being raised within the African American community, nature is not really a thing that folks get too deeply into, unless you're like from the South. Like most city black people, they like don't do a whole bunch of outside things unless it's like a cookout in the park. Like that's as outdoorsy as people get, but it's very little hiking, it's very little camping, it's very little survival skills. So you start to think of nature as, oh, that's some white people ish, or like that's some hippie dippy. And like shout out to the people who are super hood and who have never been hiking, but like expand your horizons, find a trail in your neighborhood. You could, like, this is the thing, you can make it a party. You could take an L, you could take a bottle, like, you know, and go on a nice nature walk. And like, this is the thing, life is a choose your own adventure novel. You don't always have to be like super duper straight laced and like Dudley do good. Like if you like whatever you need to make the situation the most of it. I have a Pisces rising, bro. I'm not finna judge you for what you do as long as the line is hard. Like as long as you are doing what you're doing safely. But within the energy of transformation, it's like, why are there so many rules? Why is everybody so uptight? Why is everybody so in this space of judging one another? Like we really are on a spinning rock in space where everything we need grows out of the planet. Now, people have put up paywalls between us and the things that we need, but literally everything that's ever been made on Earth has come from things that Earth naturally provided, or that people made from the byproducts of Earth. But it's really Earth and Gaia that's the common denominator there as the abundant benefactor. And once you understand that, once you understand the fact that like this society is really the illusion. As much as we talk about like, oh, if you get into deeper Eastern philosophic, you know, systems, it's like Gaia, you know, Maya is the illusion, like Earth itself is the illusion. But if that's the case, then we are operating within an illusion within an illusion. It's an inception illusion, because they built this fake society within what is supposed to be a fake world, and it's even less real than the fake world that we were in the first place. But it's much more comfortable because it requires much less surrender, and it gives you much more illusion of control. Um, it gives you much more illusion of control within the space of thinking that like I can just go to the grocery store, and if I work hard, then I will have food and things and I will eat. But like, what if your job, like Spirit Airlines just closed out of nowhere and laid off 8 billion trillion people, and then also beyond that, freaking left 8 other billion trillion people stranded, and there's no repercussions for them. If you as an individual were to cause that amount of backlash, oh, you'd be under the jail. But Spirit Airlines as a corporation can literally just throw a monkey wrench in the lives of like millions of people, and it's cool, and they're a corporation, and like nothing bad is probably really gonna happen to them, because even if you try to sue them, they probably already filed bankruptcy, so it's gonna be like you fighting their other creditors for funds. And it's like, so when you understand that that airline, just like, there's supposed to be rules. You can't just do that. They literally just did that. And there's going to be very little repercussions. People think that billionaires are like, oh, billionaires just do what they want because they're billionaires. No, that's how they got to be billionaires, because they were the type of people who just did what they wanted and nobody could tell them nothing in the first place. Like, it is the doubts and the fears that largely hold us back from making the changes and being who we want to be within this space-time continuum. Like, that's how Kanye West got to be Kanye West. That's how these other kind of egomaniacal people, and not that I think that Kanye is an egomaniac, but that there are also egomaniacal people who get on this scale, and they, they're just able to create their reality, because who's going to tell them no? Who's going to stop them? You're going to stop me? Who's like, Donald Trump has just been out here doing stuff, and not that I agree with the things that he's doing, but bro, if he can be out here doing this type of wild stuff, you can change something in your life. That whatever that thing in your life that you're scared to change is, you're scared of how people are going to react, or you're scared of the backlash. There's something that you wanted to start wearing. There's a new way that you wanted to try to do your hair. There's a piercing that you wanted to get. There is a job that you wanted to leave. There is a relationship that you wanted to leave, but you're scared of the social backlash. You're scared of the repercussions. And it's like, at the end of the day, bro, just do you. There are very few rules within this dynamic outside of like, just be mindful of harm to other beings, but you changing your bangs is not gonna harm nobody. And anybody who acts like they're harmed by that, anybody who acts like they're harmed by you following your dreams or by you being your best self, you don't need in your life anyway, because they really were only there to keep you small and to hold you back and to keep you within this limited dynamic where you only feel like where you feel like a pawn on the chessboard instead of feeling like a queen on a chessboard. Like, let that sink in. Like, you think you only have two moves because you're a pawn. I can only go forward. I can only, go diagonal when there's somebody right there that I can, But, but if you understand that you're a queen on the chessboard, that you can move in any amount of directions, in any amount of spaces at any given point in time, as long as, you're not harming anyone, like, as long as you are just self-determining, that's perfectly fine. And the powers that be don't really want folks to understand that that's a possibility for them, because then how would they sell you fear wholesale? How would they make you, buy all this makeup if you thought that you were just naturally beautiful? If you thought that all you needed was proper skincare and proper hydration and proper nutrition? What if you realized that like 80% of your problems would go away with those things? Like, most of your mental health issues is people are out here highly malnourished. Like, as much as we think of vitamins and their effect on our vitamins and minerals and their effect on our physical bodies, they also affect our brains and how our brains function. So when you understand that most people are out here malnourished, haven't had a real food in decades, have been just eating processed plastic, you'll understand the state of the mental health crisis. You'll understand that, like, most people just need a good meal and a hug, and like 80% of the world's problems would be solved. And that's a great transition, because we're going to be starting Therapy Thursdays, which are going to be lives where everybody can come and tap in. And we'll even set it up where, if we don't do it maybe on this platform, maybe we'll do it on YouTube or something, where people can come in and go live with me, and we can just have one-on-one chats. You guys can share in the comments, ask questions, just generally get things off of your chest, because community is hella important, and it's important to have safe spaces where you can just go and share and get things off your chest. I call it take what's on your mind and get it off your chest. So that's what we're going to be doing over here on Thursdays. Feel free to come back and tune in. But we're also going to get into this Moonology deck, one of my favorite decks because it deals with the phases of the moon and also astrology energies. And as a full moon baby and as a Scorpio who's very much like, is that a mystery over there? Better go investigate it. I very much respect and venerate those two energies because of their ability to help us navigate. The moon before, modern lighting was the way that people used to navigate in ancient times. You couldn't really travel on a moonless night unless you were just him, like, or her, unless you just knew where you were going like that. So last quarter moon in Gemini, clear your mind. Okay. So weren't we talking about that when we were talking about one of the things that you go to nature for? Like, it's when I appreciate you. Your vibe is appreciated also. When you go to nature, it's usually because 3D reality has become overwhelming. And there are other ways that, if you're not necessarily an outdoorsy person, if it's not super warm where you live, or, you just don't have access to a lot of nature because maybe you live in a city that's like very landlocked, we'll work within the not even necessarily limitations, but just the parameters, because it's just a different set of circumstances that requires different set of uh, solutions. So house plants are an excellent option. If you are bad at plants, spider plants are an excellent option. It's very hard to kill them. You need to water them once every 8 billion 8 billion months. Like, peace lilies are also good starter plants. They're very good for cleaning the air. They got voted by NASA as like one of the best indoor plants for air filtration. So that'll literally help you clear your mind, because most people live in cities. There's smog, there's pollution, and even within indoor environments, there's pet dander. There's all sorts of things. So when you have clean air, that allows you to just be in a better mental space. So shout out to peace lilies, and they start to droop when they need to be watered. So at the end of the day, you can just like whoop, whoop, whoop. It'll tell you when it needs to be watered. So you can't like kill it unless you're just completely negligent. And shout out to the people who are completely negligent, because life be life in sometimes. But clear your mind. Meditation is very much a cliche at this point in time. I feel like if you are watching this reading, encountering this, then someone has told you about meditation. You may not know that there are many different modes of meditation. Like, one of my primary modes of meditation is when I am working out. It allows me to just kind of quiet my mind, be completely within my body, and just kind of tuned into what every muscle is doing, to how every muscle is feeling, to how my breath is moving. And that's essentially what yoga is. That's essentially what a lot of forms of ancient meditation are, even within holding your body still. That requires a lot of muscle control and attention. When you start to wobble, you need to recenter. And so there are tons of different ways that you can meditate. There's walking meditations. Also, in terms of clearing your mind, at the beginning of every video over here, we do our 528 hertz tuning fork, just to kind of get everybody. But sound healing is an excellent way to kind of clear your mind, because energetically we get a lot of chatter, especially now that we live in the days of doom scrolling, where you're just scrolling and you're taking in all these thoughts and all of this information that technically our brains are not equipped to deal with. Like, our ancestors did not have access to this level of overstimulation. And so that's why a lot of people are kind of in a manic type energy space, are very much programmed by things outside of themselves. So when you're taking these moments to clear your mind, it's kind of like, clearing your cache in your web browser, or clearing your history, or clearing your hard drive, defragging your hard drive. It's necessary to get rid of the clutter that accumulates within our mind, just from being. And God forbid you're empathic. If you're empathic, then you definitely need to be taking some steps on a daily basis to clear your mind, whether you are smudging yourself, um, Aromatherapy is also a nice way. So you can get that in the form of tea. You can drink some nice lavender chamomile tea and just kind of relax, mellow out with that. Ashwagandha is also another excellent plant for mellowing yourself out, kind of evening out your nervous system from, you know, the spikes and the divots that is just going on social media. Because at any given point in time, there's so many things to be upset about. Like, there's so many things telling you to be afraid or telling you to be uh, concerned about this or about that. And not saying that we shouldn't be concerned, but your concern should be based within the things that are directly within your control, within the things that you can directly control. And you can directly control who you spend time with, the corporations that you spend your money with, the media that you intake, the food that you intake, and all of those are very, very powerful things. And they will start to have effects on the macrocosms of your world. But if you start worrying and giving energy to things that are outside of your control, like, shout out to everybody in this chat and who's going to come across this, who's in the Black community. I don't know if this is like made it to white news, but Megan Thee Stallion and Klay Thompson broke up, and it has ignited like this war between the sexes, but also just um this really antagonistic energy where people are being upset by something that does not have anything to do with their everyday life. Like, there are people out here upset. Their cortisol levels are testing in the ranges as if they just got cheated on or they just went through a breakup, but it's not actually happening to them. But they're online arguing with strangers about it, to the fact that it has their blood pressure and their mind so confused that their body essentially thinks that they're going through the itch. And so that's why it's so important to keep your mind clear, to not let outside things come up and pull your string, like Buzz Lightyear, like a karate chop action figure, and just make you have knee-jerk reactions to outside stimuli. Like, that is super duper unhealthy for your nervous system. That's what self-determination is really about. Like, decide how you feel about things on a conscious and on a spiritual level, based on alignment and based on, you know, the greater good of reality, not based on just knee-jerk reactions and cortisol levels and, you know, like stimuli, because you're constantly being fed this information, and so it starts to seem more important and more relevant. And so clearing your mind is probably the most healthy thing that we can do in this state and time, because one of the things about analysis paralysis is it's basically just too much information. It's a situation where you're trying to deal with too many factors. And honestly, if you sit there and simplify, you will really start to see, like, okay, what are the things that I can actually do? Not what would I do if I could do this and if circumstances were different. And like, that's all well and good. And when circumstances change, you can deal with that in its appropriate time. But with things being what they are now, what can you actually do? And once you start to evaluate things from that circumstance with a clear mind, with a clear heart, with a balance with all of those things, with surrender to uh, the things that we can't control. You know, it's like the serenity prayer. It's like, give me, you know, the power to control the things that I can control, you know, the power to, you know, not care about the things that I can't control, and the grace to know the difference between the two. Like, that's a big thing. Um, okay, I pulled two cards here. So leave the past behind, which is another excellent way to clear your mind. Ooh, let's get into that. Let's talk about how much of people's minds are clogged with past events. And this is something that we're definitely getting into with this Scorpio full moon. That's why this title is called Let It Go, Let It Go, Let It Go. Because leave the past behind. The past is an excellent informational tool when it comes to gathering data in regards to specific instances and specific information. If you dealt with this one person and they did this thing 8 times, that is a very good testament to that one person. The problem starts to be when you start to extrapolate that to people who seem similar to this one person, or people who have the same characteristics of this one person. Because that's when the line starts to get skewed. That's when you start to bleed onto things. And, you know, pattern recognition is an excellent tool. I have it in abundance. Shout out to, you know, all of the neurodivergent folk who, who do the pattern recognition. But at a certain point in time, you can start to see patterns where they do not exist. There's a certain thing as a red flag, but then there's another thing as you being triggered, and those aren't the same things. And a good way to make sure that you are facing things with a clear mind so you can see whether it's the other person or whether it's you tripping is to leave the past behind. Leaving the past behind is an excellent way to do that because listen, like Erica Badu said in Bag Lady, like I'm so glad that that is the courage to change what you can. Thank you. Wisdom to change the things you cannot, and courage to change what you can. Thank you. Because it is a very courageous act. Fear will keep you complacent. Fear will keep you in this space time continuum of like, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I should do it. It just keeps you in this space of fearing the unknown, fearing the in between, instead of looking at it as a space of possibility. So we want to step into a courageous atmosphere, which is not to be the absence of fear, but to do things even when it's scary. Like that's what true courage is. It's like stepping out on faith even when you don't know that the outcome is guaranteed. So as we are leaving the past behind, we want to make sure that we're healing the things that we have been through. And healing takes a lot of different modalities for everybody. Some people like therapy. Shout out to Therapy Thursdays, which we're going to be doing. But some people's therapy is church. Some people's therapy is their art. Some people's therapy is music. However you heal, however you take what's on your mind and get it off your chest, however you express that is perfectly wonderful and is necessary. But we want to make sure that we're leaning into these things so that we're not bringing, we're not being the bag lady from the Erica Badu song. We're not bringing a bunch of clutter into new situations and therefore complicating them with past energies. We want to make sure that we are giving new situations fresh and clean slates and really evaluating them on their own merit as opposed to on the basis of our trauma. And that can be easier said than done because sometimes our traumas aren't even our own. Sometimes they're generational. Sometimes they are deeply rooted within our DNA. And so it's like, how do we get past those? Well, the number one way that you get past those is you mostly just sit with them and feel them out and acknowledge them, because most times our ancestors did not have a chance to. Whether, whatever your ancestry is, life can be difficult. And so there's always been blocks and impediments that kept people from being able to process their trauma in real time. And sometimes as their descendants, it falls upon us to be the ones to process it. But shout out to a lot of people who are making radical changes within this generation, who are vastly changing the ways that they show up as opposed to the way that their ancestors showed up. Breaking those generational cycles and bringing in new healthy traditions, bringing in new healthy modes of communication, whereas silence and secrecy was previously the norm, and understanding all the ways that those things were harmful to us because, the truth will set you free. And at the end of the day, leaving the past behind can be a difficult thing to do because often, people are defined by their past. So it's like, who am I if I am not a product of my past? If you have to, determine who you are based on just truly internal stimuli without outside validation or veneration or even subjugation or victim mentality. Like, who am I as a sovereign empowered being? What would I really do if I could do whatever I want? That's really, really scary for a lot of people because it's a level of responsibility that we aren't really taught within this reality. We aren't taught the tools to really self-determine in healthy ways. We're taught to go to school and follow instructions and go to this class when you need to be at this class and get up when you hear the bell ring. We're automatically conditioned into this very robotic system of simply responding to stimuli as opposed to self-creating and being self-fulfilling and being co-creating systems with reality. Because what would you do if you could do whatever you want, for better or for worse? And most people are scared of that, because a lot of people in their unhealed selves and their unchecked anger have impulses that they're not really proud of. But there are also impulses, it's like, I would help this person, I would stand up to my boss who I see bullying, not even bullying me, who I see always bullying this other coworker. And it's like, somebody should stand up for that person. Like, what would you truly do if you knew that you were fully supported by the universe? If you knew that spirit had a plan for you, what would you really do? How would you really show up in reality if you understood that you were more powerful than you realize? How would you really shape things? What would you really like this reality to look like? Because a lot of times I've seen people recently getting upset about, oh, they're gutting the Voting Rights Act. And I live in Louisiana and they're doing some weird things with the elections. But like, also, what are you going to do about it is really the question. Like, shout out to what people are trying to do. People have been trying to disenfranchise people and keep them from freedom for as long as for as far as the eye can see. Like I'm saying, feudal times, like pick your system of government. There's always been attempts to oppress and attempts to repress. The question is, what are we going to do about it? Are we going to just go along with it and allow these things? Are we going to come up with our own alternatives and our own resources and our own functions? Are we going to allow fear of the ways that self-determination was shut down in the past to determine how we deal with things in the future? Are we going to leave the past behind and really step into the fact that we are in a season of Pluto in Aquarius? And look that up if you don't know what it means. But we are in a season of really infinite possibilities of like whatever you like. Like, it is very much the age of Aquarius, and it's very much about collective energies over, egocentric, self-serving principles and people who are in despotic, ruling positions. It's very much about power to the people right now. But it's like, are we willing to step into that power and really deal with, making decisions and choices? Because as much as we want to be upset about exploitative practices, if we still continue to feed into these systems, then we kind of have we can complain less, because you have to put your money where your mouth is. As much as, like, Amazon, it does not treat their workers fairly, like Walmart does not treat their workers fairly. Like, if you go and you shop and you spend your money in those places, then you are on a certain level of complacent with that. And that can be a hard pill to swallow. Nobody really wants to hear. And because it's easier to shop at those places. It's hard to do things. But the Montgomery bus boycott was over a year. It was over a year where people who did not have cars took buses, carpooled, walked tens of miles to go and work a full day and then walk tens of miles home, as opposed to feeding into a system that was oppressing them. There are precedents for it within history, but we are very much full upon the bread and circus of modern reality. There's video games to play, and there's NBA and NFL and whatever sports you would like to watch. Like, there's the World Cup, and there's this, and there's always something that can keep you within this space of ease, keep you in this space of doing what's easy over doing what's right. But like, at the end of the day, we have to look ourselves in the we have to look at ourselves in the mirror. We have to be able to live with ourselves and with the consequences of our own actions. And it's like, if we keep feeding these beasts and these structures, we can't be upset when they exist. And that goes into anything. If you are in a toxic job and the boss treats you like crap, but you still go to work and you still give 110%, like, you're signing up for that. And you are basically giving them permission to treat you that way because you're like, I don't think I can get a better job. If you thought you could get a better job, you would leave. If you thought that there was a place that would treat you better, you would leave. And that goes for relationships. That goes for people who are in crappy marriages, and it's like, you and this person are clearly not aligned, and there's all these worldly things tying it to you, and like, yes, all of those things are real, but at the end of the day, you being your most happy, fulfilled self and being able to show up in that way is going to make you a better parent, a better partner to whoever, as opposed to a miserable version of you that is kind of stuck on this hamster wheel of, like, I think I should do this just because I think I have no other choices. Like, no, our options are incredibly varied. We live in a universe of infinite possibilities. In this Scorpio full moon, this transformational energy that we are in right now is really calling your bluff. It's like, oh, you want this, right? This is what you say you want. Are you going to step into it? Are you going to make the changes necessary to achieve it? Or are you just going to, like, be complacent? And this is the thing. It's We all come to things in our own time. Sometimes it is just not the time and the season. This might just be the seed that gets planted that people are ready to cultivate in a couple of years, which is why this is a timeless reading, because these energies all manifest in our charts in different ways, like depending on where Scorpio is within your chart, depending on where Taurus is within your chart, and even if you don't have it within your planets, it's in your houses. So all of these energies affect us in different ways, and so this might be a message that you need 2 years from now. This might be a message that is necessary for somebody who's like, they're right on the cusp, and this is just what they need to get them ideologically over that hurdle, to get them into a space of being courageous enough to change the things that are actually within their control to change. Because it's like, not everything is within our control to change, and we waste a lot of energy putting energy into things that do not actually affect our everyday lives. Like, so much of this celebrity culture, so much of even politics. Like, once the people are in office and once the political machinery starts ticking the way that it ticks, until we get to election time, or until we start developing systems that on our own that counter mandate. Like, shout out to the Black Panthers who created um, you know breakfast programs for youth and so forth. When they were finding malnutrition within their communities, they stepped in to fill the space, as opposed to waiting for government and the powers that be to come and do it for them. So it's very much an energy of, what are we willing to do? What are the changes that we are willing to see and create within this space-time continuum? Arguing about whether the earth is round or flat. And this is the thing. I am all about uh, interesting philosophical and perspective things, because that argument gets into historical arguments. It gets into lots of modes of perception, and yeah, but even that, I would say, is, it allows for the opportunity of growth, because it's a play in perspective. Whereas the things that I'm more so talking about are more so just like the just downright triggering. Like, you go on the news and it's like, oh, somebody did a heinous crime, and now there's people in the comment sections arguing, like, it's just a lot of trauma dumping and a lot of trauma. The things that make you feel a way in your chest, you'd read it and you go, it either makes you happy or disgust, like those things that are very polarizing. Um, those things that are very polarizing are more so the things that I'm talking about, where it's like, you don't really want to feed into it. You don't really want to argue with the trolls, because there are people who go into comment sections strictly for the purpose of just pissing people off and watching them squirm. And that's why it's very important to be balanced within yourself. It's why it's very important that we bloom even when no one is watching. Because it's like, if you know that your argument is the truth, if you know that your perspective is true, there's really no need to go out and proselytize that, or go out and convince anybody else, because if you're really just secure within that position, you don't really need anybody to join you there in order to, you know, in order to be comfortable within it, in order to be peaceful within that space. It's only, I find, that when people are unsure of their position, that they like, hey, yeah, no, I'm right, right, yeah, because we're right, right, yeah, we're right. Everybody's, it's like this, it's this need for groupthink that kind of exists when when the goal is more so to just belong. And a lot of times the fear of ostracization, there's another syllable in there, but the fear of being ostracized, the fear of being an outcast, the fear of being square peg in a round hole, because at the end of the day, humans are communal creatures. And so the biggest impediment to change is normally, what's this person gonna think, what's my mom gonna think, what's my pastor gonna think, what's my kids gonna think, what's my cousin, who's my favorite cousin, who I always bust it up with, gonna think. And people don't want to be found lacking within the views of their peers, because most times that's where their self-esteem is generated from. But when you are the type of person who gets it out the mud like the lotus, and who is able to bloom on your own, you understand that your blooming is based on you. It has nothing to do with anybody else, and nobody else nobody else adding to it or trying to subtract from it is going to change what you are doing, when it is self-fulfilling and when it is self-generating. So when you step outside of that need for the validation of your peers and for everybody to kind of pat you on the back and to give you a good job sticker, you step into this space of really being very sovereign in a way that it makes you Neo in the Matrix. It makes you the person who can see beyond the programming and the code, because a lot of people are just doing what they think they should. A lot of people are just in religions because that's what their parents did, and that's what they grew up with, and that's what they're used to. A lot of people are just in relationships because it was one that they ended up in, and it would be too difficult, and all their friends know each other, and it would just be a big fallout to change these things. Yeah, sheeples. And it really is that. But like, bless their hearts, because it can be scary. It is scary to step out on faith, and we acknowledge that. We have, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do type energy for the sleep. Because most times it's not their fault that they're asleep. They've been lulled to sleep. They've been constantly lullabied in every direction, when the food is keeping you addicted and complacent and malnourished and in a reactionary state. And then when you're drinking polluted water, and you're breathing polluted air, and you're watching polluted programming, it's very easy to fall into that trap, into that rote way of living. And so we have compassion over here for the sheeples. We have compassion over here because sheeples need shepherds, and we tend to be those within the flock. We tend to be the leaders, the people who have the vision to see, and who are like, you know, I'm not. I could be like, because a lot of people who are shepherds could be wolves. You know, a lot of people who are shepherds could be wolves, could very much be wolves. But we choose to, take compassion upon the sheeple and choose to guide them, as opposed to choosing to prey upon them. But that's really the line. That's really the line of harm. It's like, well, do you feel like the sheeple kind of deserve what they get? Because it's like, well, they're too stupid to, like, and it can be very easy to fall into that mindset, especially when you are dealing with people who are not tapped in, not tuned into themselves, and are out here perpetuating harm based on their inability to actually control themselves, when they're just reacting to stimulus and kind of being like a cornered animal in that way, it can be frustrating to deal with them. But much like people who deal with rescue animals, or people who really rehabilitate anything, whether it is, children that have been in abusive situations, whether it is, there's a certain amount of patience, and there's a certain amount of understanding that their actions are not personal against you. And that's another way that we can get out of the need to be so dependent upon other people's thoughts and things, because it's like, once you start understanding that people's reactions have like this much to do with you, and like infinite amounts to do with their past trauma that they haven't dealt with, or the way that their fourth grade teacher embarrassed them in front of the class one time. Like, it really be that deep with people. So it behooves us to let that ish go. Let it go, let it go, let it go, let it go. Like, if you're at the grocery store and the person doing the checkout is just in a terrible mood, you got to let them be great. You don't know what they're going through within their interpersonal life. You don't know. So it's important for us to have compassion and to have grace, both with ourselves, but also with others. Like, it's important that we don't slip into this level of spiritual egocentricness where it's like, well, I am doing better, so I am better. It's like, no, but for the grace of God, we could all be sleeping ignorant if we had different stimulus. Oh, you have fun with your bone, baby? You finished it? Yeah? You finished your bone? This is Oya, everybody. Oya, say hi. She just finished her bone. She's a very happy puppy. She had a lamb shank. Ooh, yeah, yeah. It's a happy baby. That's my baby. Um, you come to lay down. But yeah. So we just want to make sure. Yeah, we just want to make sure that we are having the courage to change the things that we can. It can be very easy to get stuck into situations that we feel um, listen, the Scorpio placements are very, very real in how they translate. I have a stellium, so it's big Scorpio energy over here, which is why I feel so equipped to specifically speak on this perspective and this point of view. Because as a Scorpio stellium, I deal with change better than the average person. I came to the planet having to deal with a lot of change very early on in my human years. So I am used to the fluctuations. And that allows me to weather them well, but it also allows me to be able to translate that and to be able to pass that knowledge forward on, like, hey, this is how I have found methods that I have found to be empowering, based on either personal experience or either my philosophical studies. All of these things. Hi, baby. I know you want attention. You want attention? Yeah. You want to play? Where's your ball? Where's your ball? Go find your ball. This is our daily thing. Um, but yeah, just apparently I'm gonna take this as a sign to get up off of here soon. But I appreciate everybody who has tuned in. If you came in on the tail end, there's probably some messages for you in the first part. So go back and check this out on the replay. If you are feeling the vibe, please join us over here. We're going to be doing lots more content soon. And the baby's ready to play, so I'm gonna go. But we're gonna be doing much more content soon. We're gonna be doing therapy Thursday. She's teething, and so it's very much a space of, we're gonna get a cold washcloth, a frozen washcloth, and soothe those puppy teeth. But I love you guys, and I'll see you all later. All right, bye bye.